beats per minute. Any questions why?
That's the wrong. It's on A.
There, yeah, that's exactly. Any questions why? What would we do here? 60-year-old, go to age 60 and find the Y value, and it's right between 160 and 180. Anybody do it a different way? You went with the chart? Okay, that's fine. So you said 50 was 170? So up 10, down 10? Yep, that works. Anybody else do something different? Okay. And B, what age would you predict for someone who has a maximum heart rate of 200 beats per minute? 20 years old? 20 age? 20 years old? Everybody's good there? Okay, C, write an equation that can be used to determine the maximum heart rate of someone who is X years old.
220 minus X.
Yes. Now we'd need a little bit more because what you said was an expression. Do you remember the difference between an expression and an equation? Equation, equal sign for an equation. Expression doesn't. So how could I fix 220 minus X? Y equals 220 minus X? That's fine. This lesson is actually, okay, we'll talk about how to find the 220 minus X in a second. This lesson was actually looking more at function notation. So instead of saying Y equals, they're going to write f of x equals, but hopefully by now you know that's the same thing. F of x is just the y. At least that's what my Plainview math teachers used to tell me. I know y'all got a few different ones, but you got Miss Ferguson. I had her too, so I would think it would be similar. So how did we come up with 220 minus x?
The max heart rate for 0 is 220.
Okay, so what's another word for this? When I'm at 0, 220, this is the
Initial.
okay, the initial point. I'm not disagreeing with your terminology, but I'm trying to fit it into my box. Go ahead, explain how you got it. So 220 was the initial? Go ahead.
I don't know what to explain.
Okay. Well, never mind. I'll just keep trying to explain it my way. I'll try to fit it in my box. So what is this point, 0, 220?
Oh.
It's where it crosses the y-axis. That's the y-intercept. And then what's the slope of the line? -1. We go down one and right one, down one and right one. Right? If you look at you can look at the table, change in y over change in x. And because it's linear, I know the slope then is -1. So if I know the slope and the y-intercept, the slope and the y-intercept, slope and intercept, the slope, intercept, slope, intercept form. We're getting somewhere. Right? Y equals mx plus b. What is your slope? What is your y-intercept? So this is that, Just flip it around. To write the equation of a line, we need what two things? Slope and a y-intercept. That's all we need. If you can find those, you can write the equation of a line. Questions there? I gotta get better. I gotta write on the iPad. Nobody can see anything I just did. Dadgummit. You can hear me at least. All right. Questions on C. D. Where's D? Oh. What would you think are reasonable values for x in your equation? And explain why. We stuck there? What is the X? See, this is all the context. This is all the A plus stuff. AP, age. So what would be a reasonable expectation of age? Anything? You know, the 15,000-year-old man? So it does need to be positive. You're right. Negative is out. Negative's not reasonable. You can't have a negative age. You can have a positive age, but if we're also talking about heart rate, at some point, when does your heart stop? So what would you say is reasonable? There's not an exact right answer, but what would you say is reasonable? Under 220? Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, also if you think about it that way, what would happen, what if you did live to be 300 years old? If I followed this pattern, where's my line going to be? Think about the heart rate's going to be negative 80 at 300. So how can you have a negative? So that doesn't make sense either. For me, I would say 0 to, I think when we did this lesson, I said 0 to 120. I think that A plus says 105. But I know some people that are older than 105. Well, I don't know them, but they exist. I've seen them on, what's the morning talk show they do where the Al Roker tells people, the Smuckers, you know what I'm talking about? Y'all don't watch the news. Like when I'm home during Thanksgiving break and Christmas break and I'm watching like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. You know who Al Roker is? The weatherman that lost like 150 pounds. He always is at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Bigger than life. Anyways, who cares? They have an ad sponsored, like Smuckers pays them to talk about, it's so-and-so's birthday, and they're 108 years old today. They say the secret to life is she has a Dr. Pepper a day. I mean, you know, just some little fun thing like that. So I've heard people over 105, but I've never heard anybody over 120. Recently. So there's no, here's what they said. They said since X represents age, right? You're giving context. You're showing you know what you're talking about. Age can't be negative, which is what Coop said. And they said probably wouldn't be over. Oh gosh, I'm running out of space. Can y'all read my chicken scratch?
No.
Not good? Okay. Well, I can't get any better, sorry.
No, it's not.
Since X, I'll fix that. That does look like a Y. Since X represents age, comma, age can't be negative and probably wouldn't be over. That's your 5. Yeah, it gets a little hard to read there. Okay. I was trying to fit it in. I should have just scooted over. I got to get back in the swing of things. I've been on break too, like you guys. But my writing's probably not going to get much better than that. So if you can't read it, just... I can write better on the board, but then it's not recorded. It's just bad news. Any questions there? And then E says, do you think it is possible to have a maximum heart rate of 100 beats per minute? So whose maximum heart rate would be 100 beats per minute? 120-year-old. So do you think it's possible to have a maximum heart rate of 100 beats per minute?
Maybe, but not really.
So I don't like the terming. I argue this at the A plus stuff too. Possible? Yes. Plausible or probable? No. You're probably not going to be 120. Sorry, hate to burst your bubble. Right? And there's not very many people that are 120. But possible, so however you answer it, as long as you give your reasoning why, they're not going to count it wrong. Because this is a your opinion problem. You're possible. It's way too close to that line for them to count that right or wrong. Here's what they said. They said, no, even someone who's 105 would have a max heart rate of 115. So they're saying, because in their domain, they said it wasn't likely. I would say something like, it's possible but not plausible, not probable. That would be my kind of wording. So this would be what this is. I think they would count this wrong, or count this right. Possible, not probable. Person would need. Oh gosh, it's freezing. Would need to be 120 years old. See, I'm giving context. I'm backing up my reason. When they say explain why or why not, I'm telling what the criteria would have to be. They would have to count that right. I don't think they count that wrong. Okay, what did we find for H of 32?
What was I not supposed to know? Oh, 177.84.
So here is the rule. Now they have not came out and said this for pre-cal yet, but this is the rule they use for AP calculus. 3 decimal places. Everything to 3 decimal places. So they said that's not set in stone for pre-cal yet. Hopefully when they give us the practice test, we'll know more about that. But for now, don't round shorter than 3 decimal places. Okay, we got to get in that habit. I normally round to 2, which that made me miss a lot of stuff. Okay, so H of 32 is 177.84. Any questions about finding that one? Okay. And interpret your answer in terms of context. So what is H of 32 equals 177.84? What does this statement say in relation to the whole problem, the big picture?
HR Max is a woman that is 32 years old, and her HR Max would be 177.84.
Yes, that's the way we need to. A woman, because H is only for women, so a woman who is 32, this is the age, her maximum heart rate would be 177.84 beats per minute. That's what they're looking for. Does everybody know how we got there? The context problem? Like I said, I think that's the biggest difference between a regular pre-cal class and an AP pre-cal class, is they're going to keep making you go back to this context over and over and over. I think it's easy to do once you have got in the hang of it, but I know most of our questions we ask you don't make you do that. So we got to make sure we can interpret. A 32-year-old woman has an estimated, here's their terminology, max heart rate of 177.84 beats per minute. Okay, a couple of things I need to go back, and if we look back up here at the top, the age and the HR max, we kind of talked about this, but I didn't write it down. The age here was our X value, and the HR max is our Y value or our F of X value, if we're sticking with function notation. Remember, our X is here. This is the input. This is the independent variable, the thing we have control over. Whereas the F of X is the output, the dependent variable. All right, we don't have control over the output. Input, output. If you guys ever had me before, we probably watched the chickens go in the machine. Man, that's a bad video. I may not remember, but it's tough to watch. Looking at 2, they're saying, what is the maximum heart rate of a 60-year-old? So if we call our function here f of x, then a 60-year-old, that would mean f of 60 equals 160. Right? I'm plugging in 60 as the x. That is my independent variable for the age. So again, I told you they were focusing in on function notation, and I kind of left that part out. So on B, how would we write that in function notation?
F of 20 equals 200.
Yes. And before we knew, this is what I'm looking for. Before we knew it was 20, the question they were really asking you is when the y value is 200. So they were asking you when f of x is 200, what is the x value? And we found the x value is 20 as the answer there. Okay, and then on D part, if we're asking for reasonable x values, what is it I'm asking for? For what x values we can plug in? What's another term for that? The domain. Exactly. So this here is a domain question. That's all the possible x values we could plug in. And E is a range problem. Right? We said the range should be between 220 and they say 115. Right? For me, I would have said 105. Right? Because I said you could be 115. But it's still outside of my range. Okay. Sorry, we got started a little late.